That's a long tangent, and honestly, I could keep going with this. I feel like at this point, this argument has definitely spanned more than. At this point, this argument has definitely gone through over one part. It's possible that it's spread into 3 parts actually. So let's call it quits on that argument now. With the last little bit that I'm going to say being, let me think of a suitable end point. Like pirating modern day stuff that is still currently sold, like PC games sold through Steam. Pirating that kind of stuff is not something I support at all. Particularly because Steam is, or just PC games in general, Steam GOG, the ease of access there is so great. You can pick up so many great PC games, so many old PC games, and the developers, publishers do still get that kind of kickback because of the digital sale, and that's great. For your old stuff, like your PS2 stuff, your Xbox stuff, your GameCube stuff. It's like, for the love of God, Fire Emblem Path of Radiance on GameCube goes for, I think it is the single most expensive GameCube game, but it's a game that deserves to be played. And so if you want to pirate that, I hold nothing against you for that, because Nintendo hasn't re-released it. Would I suggest you go out and pay all that money to get the game and play it? No, I wouldn't. I would suggest you just play that game however you can and enjoy it. Because at this point, Nintendo isn't losing money from your not buying it. That's the point. They're not losing money if you don't buy it with these old games.
There you are.
That said, if they re-release it,
it's terrible, but also beautiful.
Maybe to you. You're a skinny little thing.
yeah. Like I said, that said, if they re-release Path of Radiance on something, get it on there.
We'll need to find a way down to the bottom.
Support them, the system developers, the publishers, on the re-release. And let's be fair, that's where a lot of this support comes from. It's like, why were people clamouring?
Stay there.
Why are people clamouring so hard for a re-release of Earthbound? Because they played it. Why were there so many people clamouring for it? Because they played it through emulation, through piracy, through that kind of thing. And then when the option was there, people bought it. So it's not as bad a thing as... It's not as bad a thing as these companies will make out, and it never has been on these consoles, these systems like this. Especially with retro stuff. That said, there is always the retro stuff that will never be re-released. Particularly...
I heard strange noises.
No permanent damage, thank you.
Particularly like licensed titles, or titles with licensed music and stuff like that. These days it's become...
There's another lever in that corner. Do you think you can reach it?
It's become more of a thing for through updates and games being consistently sold through digital.
Your turn now.
That licensing rights end. It's like, I have Marvel vs. Capcom 2 on PS3. It is great. It's probably the best way to play it on the HD generation. You can't buy that game anymore, and you haven't been able to for several years because of the licensing issue of Marvel characters in a Capcom game. Because Capcom has to get money from that as part of the deal, and because it's Capcom's characters, their intellectual property, and so on and so forth, neither Marvel nor Capcom can alone get the money from that. And so, like, the licensing ended and it's gone. And it's possible it will never be re-released. So what's the suggestion there?
Stay there!
And then there's other stuff like, we'll be doing, like, we've already done a Spider-Man game, and I have stated my intention to continue doing Spider-Man games. Pretty much none of these Spider-Man games will ever be re-released. Spider-Man on PS1 will probably never be re-released, because for it to be re-released, there has to be the agreement between Marvel and Activision. The movie games will probably never be re-released because of the various issues around the movies and the movie licensing. And it's a shame because Spider-Man 2 on GameCube, Xbox and PS2 is a really solid title. And they'll never be re-released because of the licensing issues. And so what then? You can't exactly go and support the developers through purchasing these games on the modern systems digitally. So what, I suppose the end point that I took a while to get round to of this argument is, when the option is there to purchase it in a way that will support, show support to developers, will send money to the developers in that kind of way, when that option is there, support them. Support the people who make the games you love. When the option isn't there and there is no way to do that, then play the games you love however you can, is probably really the biggest point I can make. So anyway, Sands of Time, which I've been playing this entire time. So I don't think Sands of Time goes for much on these systems. That said, there is a way to play the Sands of Time on a modern system that isn't the HD trilogy, which is awful. It's one of the select few original Xbox games that is backwards compatible on Xbox One, which is great. Like, you know, if you can play it there, cool, great, grab it there. Chances are the Xbox version is probably like the best version. Whether there is any real difference between the Xbox and the PS2 version, I don't know. But the Xbox One backwards compatibility does have a very excellent track record of improving the original games. The resolution, which, you know, let's be fair, if you're buying the HD trilogy, you were buying it for the resolution upgrade more than anything.
Please be careful.
But on Xbox One, the resolution upgrade is there without the compromised sound quality. It won't have the same compression that the GameCube version has. You can get it digitally, which a lot of people do now, and it is convenient. So it's like, you know, you're going to play this game nowadays on a modern system, I would probably recommend the Xbox One. If you're going to play this game on its original systems, any of them,
Done.
I don't think any one version was overly superior to the others.
Stop.
What is that? think this switch is actually going to open the door for a limited time. Is there a way up there? Let me check. It's not that. It's not going to be the other side either. What is that? Oh, is that something I can only get on my way down and I won't be able to get it now? I know Warrior Within had, no. Yeah, it might have been something I could only get on the way down. I know Warrior Within had breakable chests that would unlock concept art. I don't recall this game having that, but I don't know what that is. It's possible that's what that is. We're not going to make it through wall running. Yeah, I'm not sure what that is. Huh. Oh well. May as well get out of here. Can we rewind far enough to a point where we can make up for that mistake? Clearly I didn't get down fast enough. Yeah! Well, this looks like a corridor. Fairly uninteresting corridor. Oh, the menagerie. I remember this area.
This was the Sultan's zoo.
Oh. What was I talking about? Yeah, like the backwards compatible version on Xbox. Probably the best way to play this game on a modern system. So I haven't done. I don't own Sands of Time on Xbox, so I've not tried it. But based on the other games that I own for the original Xbox, Star Wars, cough cough, the resolution upgrade looks really good, and supposedly there are performance upgrades in the backwards compatibility, which I cannot confirm because I do not remember how these games, wow, Farah, maybe consider running. I do not remember exactly how these games ran on the original Xbox, but I could believe it. And so, original Xbox on Xbox One. It's cool.
Be careful.
I'd love it if they released some more Xbox One games on there, like a Togi. God knows I want to replay a Togi. Loved Togi. Togi Myth of Demons and Togi 2 Immortal Warriors were both two of my favourite games on the original Xbox. Were awesome. And were the first From Software games that I played that I actually enjoyed. I say that because I did play Kingsfield as a kid, and I never liked that. never liked the Kingsfield game that I played. It was the second game, which was actually just called Kingsfield in the West. The first game wasn't released outside Japan.
Are you all right?
Yes.
But Otogi and Otogi 2 were developed by From Software, and are two games I really loved, and they had like these really solid like damage, like these really cool destructible environments that made the fights seem so much more epic.
Birds.
Because you'd be fighting like these huge monsters.
Wonder how they survived the sand.
I don't think they did survive.
Oh, I hate the birds. Farah should be really good with dealing with these because she has the ranged weapon. And they don't require the dagger. But like, she should take that one out right now. But they had to get so close for her to actually do anything, and she takes so long to actually shoot them. Like, come on, Farah. Yeah, I thought I killed that one. At the time it was taking her. Or any others? Oh, yep, no, there's more. There we go. So you had like these pretty large open environments and these huge monsters that you'd fight. And it felt really epic and was the first game I played like that. And to this day is like one of the few games I've played that really felt like that. And I'd love to go back and replay Otogi and Otogi 2. They're not backwards compatible on Xbox One yet. Maybe they will be in the future. I really hope they will. They're also not backwards compatible on the 360 though.
The fabled menagerie of Azad, the Sultan's pride and joy. It had been one of the wonders of the world. As a child, I had dreamed of it and longed to see it with my own eyes. Now it was a place of terror, an abandoned ruin laid waste by the sands of time.
Here I am.
Alright. Okay. But yeah, it's like if I do get an original Xbox again, Otogi and Otogi 2 are gonna be on that list. The main concern with picking one up again is definitely gonna be the controls. It's like, I think I've mentioned this previously, but I did pick up a Dreamcast for the first time in the past few months. It was this year. I picked up a Dreamcast this year. It's like, as of recording, it's April. I'm not sure when this will actually be uploaded. There's actually kind of a there's a backlog of uploads to get through, so I'm not sure when this will be uploaded. But as of recording, it's currently April. I did buy the Dreamcast earlier this year. I was like, Dreamcast is a really interesting system. So many cool ideas. I love the VMU as an idea. I think that is really cool. For the love of God, the controller is awful. And, like, don't get me wrong, it's not the worst controller I've ever used. Like, the single worst thing about going back to the Nintendo 64 is the controller. But the Dreamcast controller is not a good controller.
I just saw a door open.
Speaking of the N64 controller, I actually, in my entire career of buying stuff online, which it's a career. There's a career now. Oh, this is neat, because I think this is the first time you actually die in one of the premonitions. But yeah, in my entire career of buying things online, which is a career. It's a career, I get paid for it. I don't really, but, you know, I said career and I'm sticking by that now. I have only backed one Kickstarter, and that was the Retro Fighters Kickstarter for a new design of the Nintendo 64 controller. And the Kickstarter finished,
start
I
from here.
eventually got the 64 controller after it was developed and after it went through customs because, you know, it was Retro Fighter's an American company, they had to send it to the UK. And then customs decided they wanted a piece of that pie, so I had to pay customs charge on it, which was awful. But I eventually got it, and so I have 2 64 controllers that I backed. Like, I backed for 2 of them, and I have these 2 64 controllers that are way more comfortable than the original 64 controller and play perfectly. And so the biggest issue with going back to the 64 is suddenly
You have believed
not
the rest of
an
my
issue.
tale until now. Perhaps you will also believe me when I tell you that, as we made our way through the moonlit ruins, I began to feel strangely drawn to the girl at my side. My reason told me to distrust her, though she had good cause to hate me. Yet she had proven herself loyal to me. And I confess, I was grateful for the company of someone who, like me, was flesh and blood.
I can't reach it.
It's like, yeah, no, it's a great little controller, and it makes going back to 64 way less painful. Figuratively and literally. Because,
Are you alright?
I'm fine, thanks.
like, if you've never experienced it, I'm sure you've probably heard the stories of how painful it was to play the original Mario Party.
Wonderful.
And let me tell you, those stories are true. As I remember, I played Mario Party a little bit as a kid. It was a game I rented.
Hey! There's no door.
Stand on that pressure plate, will you?
Thank you. Yeah, the original Mario Party.
Now I get through.
I don't know. Can't you crawl through a crack or something?
The original Mario Party was a game that I rented, and I don't remember having much of an issue with it at the time. The original Mario Party was big on those games where you spin the analog stick. And the best way to do that at the time, or just the best way to do that on the 64 controller, is to put your palm up against the analog stick, and then like, rotate it by like, rolling your palm against it. And like the stories you will find online about the blisters and Nintendo having to send out like special gloves for it, Nintendo losing a settlement over it. And I thought that was a load of people exaggerating, because like I said, I don't remember having trouble with it at the time, but I only rented Mario Party. I never had it fully as a kid. But, you know, in more recent years, I actually picked up Mario Party and played it for myself on the 64. And like, in one board, we had like 2 or 3 games we had to rotate the analog stick, so doing it. And in more than one of the games, I had to pause partway through on the original. At this point, I didn't have my new 64 controllers. I had the originals. I didn't have the redesigns. And so, like, there was one minigame in particular in a boat. I don't remember which minigame it is. Cause I've not played Mario Party 1 anywhere near to the extent of, like, 4 or DS.
Done. I'll start from here.
But there's a minigame in a boat that was doing. I had to pause multiple times to take a break. Because rotating the analog stick was seriously hurting my palm that badly. And I was like, and at that point I was like, you know what? No, they were right. This is honestly awful, and thank God I did not have Mario Party as a kid. Like I say, I only rented it. Thank God I never actually owned the damn thing, because I would have been one of those kids who just played through that crap. I hate when they introduce enemies during a platforming sequence, because the entire thing comes to a crawl while you deal with them, and you never have that much space to deal with them. And now it's just in the wall. It's not fair, I can't go in the wall, I can't attack it in the wall. But yeah, I've got this new 64 controller. It's not new at this point, I think it's, I've had it for over a year now. And it makes playing the 64 so much easier, which is something I really appreciate. Because there's a bunch of good stuff on the 64. Like I say, for recording purposes, most of the stuff I'll be doing on the 64 will be through the Wii U Virtual Console. For resolution's sake, mostly, just so it looks nice. Because the resolution of the 64 is not good at all, it's not aged well. And there is the thing where you can send your 64 off to be modded, to have a HDMI output. And that's a lot. That's a lot to do for a system that, honestly, I'm not going to play that much. So if I'm going to do it, it's not going to be just for recording. That is going to be something I do for myself. And yeah, the 64 has a lot of good stuff for it. I do not play it enough to justify that kind of thing. But back to the original point of like Dreamcast. Come on, if we could speed this up, I have places to be. Like through that door down there. There we go. The original Dreamcast, the original Dreamcast controller is not a nice controller. Not as bad as the 64 controller, still not great. And it's the biggest problem with playing the Dreamcast. And on the topic of the Kickstarter, Retro Fighters, the guys who did the 64 controller that I have now, started a Dreamcast. Started a Kickstarter for a Dreamcast controller early this year, which I didn't back. I didn't actually have the money at the time, which is a shame. When it comes out, I'm definitely going to consider picking one up, because there's a lot of stuff we can do on Dreamcast. And just having a comfortable way to play it really helps.